Falcon 9 will be going. Let's talk a little trajectory, shall we? Once the Falcon 9 rocket leaves the pad there at Space Launch Complex 40 or Slick 40, same with the other missions heading to the eighth shell of the Starlink constellation. This will be heading in a northeasterly trajectory. So, to our friends in the northeastern part of the Florida Peninsula, also up into Georgia and the Carolinas, be sure to keep an eye out for this rocket as it makes its ascent. Maybe a little tricky to see just because the sun will be coming up and maybe obscuring things a bit. But if you are able to capture a photo, we'd love to see what you can see on this Falcon flight. And we do have word from SpaceX that weather is improved to 95%, and they are just about to begin propellant load as they were tweeting that. And in real time, prop load has now begun on the Falcon 9 rocket, getting ready to send up 21 Starlink satellites, again, 13 with the direct-to-cell capability. Coming back to trajectory here, following stage separation, the first stage booster will land on the SpaceX drone ship. Just read the instructions. If successful, this will be the 88th booster landing on this particular drone ship and the 336th booster landing for SpaceX to date. Of course, SpaceX also wants to recover the payload fairings since it saves about $6 million per recovery effort. So they will use one of their recovery vessels to scoop those up, bring them back into Port Canaveral for refurbishment and use for a future flight. This is what that process looks like as they're bringing them aboard the recovery vessel. Their main recovery ships here on the East Coast, Bob and Doug, have each in turn been going through some dry dock refurbishment, a little bit of R&R between a whole host of recovery efforts. So to help out, SpaceX has also brought in another ship called Go Cosmos to help, as one of the SpaceX officials called it on Twitter as a pinch hitter. SpaceX founder Elon Musk getting into some hot fire tests with their new Raptor version 3 engine, which has been quite a topic of discussion on so-called space Twitter. More of a sleek design, especially compared to some of the earlier iterations of the Raptor engine, which of course powers the Super Heavy booster. Currently, there are 33 Raptors on the booster, but as we've learned in postings from the FAA regarding Starship operations here in Florida, future iterations of the Super Heavy booster will have 35 of these Raptor engines on board. So SpaceX already in the test campaign for those, and you can see this is Raptor version 3, number one of many yet to come. Also, speaking of things down at Starbase, taking a look at the Starship upper stage of the stack, as SpaceX said earlier in the week that they are ready as far as the hardware is concerned for Flight 5, pending regulatory approval. And as they shared with their mission patch for this, they fully intend to make an attempt to catch the Super Heavy booster with their launch tower there, known affectionately by SpaceX as Mechazilla. So set to be quite the feat, certainly, and we certainly intend to travel back down to Starbase for that launch whenever it is ready to happen. So again, certainly appreciate all of your support and making on the ground reporting like that happen. It is not simple and it is unfortunately not cheap either. So big thanks to our sustaining members in our YouTube member community for helping us to bring that type of robust launch coverage to you. And you can help. Time now to talk about the history of this particular booster that is going to be launching the Starlink 8-3 mission. This is 1067 in the SpaceX fleet, going for its 21st launch so far. Presumably many more to come. Its first launch came back on June 3rd of 2021. That was a cargo Dragon mission up to the International Space Station, CRS-22. Sent more than 7,300 pounds of science and supplies up to the orbiting outpost, along with a pair of rollout solar arrays, courtesy of Redwire Space. This was the second mission under SpaceX's Commercial Resupply Services 2 contract with NASA. Next up, another jaunt to the space station, this time with 4 astronauts on board with the Crew 3 launch on November 11th, 2021. There's an alternate reality in which the weather cooperated and that mission was able to launch on Halloween. And I believe there was some artwork that leaned a little bit more into the Halloween aspect of that mission, had the timing worked out, but life is what life is. The third launch came over a month after that on December 19th, 2021. It was the Turksat 5B launch. Flew again on April 27th, 2022, supporting another crew of astronauts, the Crew 4 mission. Notable because it included NASA astronaut Jessica Watkins, who became the first Black woman to serve a long-duration mission in space. This was also the debut of the 4th and so far newest Crew Dragon spacecraft, dubbed Freedom. And we know from recent press events that the 5th Crew Dragon spacecraft to make its debut is going to be rolling out on the Crew 10 mission, launching in the early 2025 timeframe. And so that quartet will have the honor of naming that spacecraft, as has been the case with all of the crews who have been the first to fly aboard their respective Dragons. So TBD on what that name will be. July 14th, 22 was the next time this booster flew. Again, another one up to the space station. This was the CRS-25 mission with more than 5,800 pounds of cargo and science heading up to the space station. Flight 6 was the first time it turned to launching Starlink satellites. That was the Group 4-34 mission on September 19th, 2022. Launch number 7 was the geostationary satellite Hotbird 13G for Eutelsat, launching on November 3rd, 2022. Final launch of that year came on December 16th with the launch of Luxembourg-based SES and their O3b mPOWER 1 and 2 satellites manufactured by Boeing. Missions 9 through 11 were all Starlink flights. Those included Starlink 5-2 on January 26th, 5-5 on March 24th, and 5-9 on May 14th. Launch number 12 was on June 18th when it launched the Satria, a communications satellite for Indonesian company PSN. Launches 13 through 16 were Starlinks as well. Those were 6-10 on August 17th, 6-22 on October 13th, 6-29 on November 22nd, and 6-35 on January 4th of this year. Launch number 17 was the Telkomsat Meraputa 2 satellite, which lifted off from Pad 40 on February 20th. And then bringing us up to the present, launches 18 through 20 were all Starlink flights. Those were 6-45 on March 31st, 6-55 on May 3rd, and 8-5 on June 5th, which of course brings us to today and the anticipated launch of the Starlink 8-3 mission coming up in 22 minutes, 28 seconds. About that first stage, some numbers to it. Again, this booster 1067 flying for a 21st time today. To base the first stage are the 9 Merlin engines, which burn rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen, producing 1.7 million pounds of thrust. Around the engine compartment are black carbon fiber landing legs, which are used to land the first stage on the drone ship. Again, today they are using just read the instructions. Above the first stage is the inner stage. This is a composite structure which consists of an aluminum honeycomb core that's surrounded by carbon fiber. In the image on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see the deployable hypersonic grid fins. These are titanium winglets that provide stability and steering for the Falcon 9 as it comes back through the atmosphere, tail first, like a dart, towards the drone ship. At the top of the inner stage are 3 mechanical latches that attach to the second stage, and at first stage main engine cutoff, high-pressure helium is used to release those latches, and 4 pneumatic pushers ensure clean separation. Second stage engine nozzle is also housed safely inside the inner stage adapter until stage separation. Speaking of that second stage, the upper stage, the Falcon 9, powered by a single modified Merlin engine called a Merlin vacuum engine, or an MVac engine. It's equipped with a large nozzle, sometimes a stubby nozzle, which is optimized for burns in the vacuum of space. It produces more than 200,000 pounds of thrust, and it will be fired twice on today's flight, placing the 21 Starlink satellites into their intended orbit. SpaceX will reserve that shorter nozzle for upper stage burns where they don't quite need as much oomph, but they will be using the longer nozzle version today. MVac engine burns the same propellant mix as the first stage, that being RP1 and LOX. Following satellite deployment, it will ignite for a third time to deorbit the upper stage, drives it back into the atmosphere where it burns up, helping to eliminate the risk, creating any unnecessary space debris on this mission. Finally, at the top of the stack here are the payload fairings, which are currently encapsulating the 21 Starlink satellites. Fairings are made up of a carbon composite material. They are 13.1 meters or 43 feet tall, and 5.2 meters or 17.1 feet in diameter. 2 halves of the fairing will be recovered a little bit further downrange from where the booster lands on the drone ship, and they will be brought back to Port Canaveral, turned over to Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where again SpaceX will refurbish them and turn them around for future flights. We are now T-minus 9 minutes, 15 seconds and counting. Just a couple minutes away from the start of the engine chill down sequence of those 9 Merlin 1D engines. Currently T minus 7 minutes, 35 seconds and counting, about 30 seconds away from the start of the engine chill down sequence that'll involve flowing a small amount of liquid oxygen through the plumbing and the turbo pumps, helping to protect them from the risk of thermal shock and damage during that startup sequence. Mentioned the countdown timeline. Let's go ahead and talk about the other side of the coin. Of course, once the Falcon 9 leaves the pad at T0, these are the nominal sequence of events that we are anticipating for this flight. T plus 1 minute, 10 seconds, the rocket will begin to pass through max Q, or the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. That'll be followed by a few events in fairly rapid succession as Falcon 9 continues to pick up in speed. We'll see first stage main engine cutoff, T plus 2 minutes, 26 seconds. That'll be followed 4 seconds later by stage separation, the ignition of the second stage engine, T plus 2 minutes, 36 seconds. And then the payload fairings will be jettisoned just before the 3-minute mark. About T plus 6 minutes and 13 seconds will be the first stage entry burn, helping to slow down the vehicle, a burn lasting about 21 seconds in total. First stage landing burn kicks in at T plus 7 minutes, 59 seconds, and the Falcon 9 rocket expected to touch down on the drone ship. Just read the instructions, about T plus 8 minutes and 21 seconds. The Merlin vacuum engine will cease firing, T plus 8 minutes, 39 seconds, and it will enter into a parking orbit and continue in that coast phase until T plus 54 minutes, 50 seconds, when there will be a brief 1-second burn, setting up the Starlink satellites to deploy, T plus 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 44 seconds. Right now, T minus 5 minutes, 20. Just a quick bit of housekeeping here. You'll notice the difference between our countdown clock and what you see there from the SpaceX feed. Excuse me. Our countdown clock is in real time. SpaceX coming in on a slight delay, so we'll be calling things out based off of real time. We're coming up on the conclusion of first stage liquid oxygen load.
Stage 1 LOX load is complete.
There, you heard that call out. And you've got someone with a little, I don't know if you call it a paddle board, but not entirely sure if they're aware that SpaceX is about to launch a rocket behind them in the next 2 minutes. However, given the flight path of the Falcon 9, that type of small watercraft will not be an impediment to launch. It's not like if you have a cruise ship or another vessel that is along the ascent corridor of the Falcon 9. That guy will be fine.
Stage 2 LOX load is complete.
Now less than 2 minutes liftoff, and as you just heard, with stage 2 LOX load complete, the Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of propellant. As we come into the final couple minutes, appreciate the more than 11,000 of you who are with us live. If you haven't already, be sure to hit that like button, and we'll come back to the live chat.
Closeout has started.
On the other side of liftoff, now that we've nearly got our rocket ready to go. Do want to just quickly give a shout to Mr. Jim Edgar for a very generous $50 super chat, saying, at least being Jim Edgar watching the launch from Snoqualmie, Washington. Go SpaceX.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Are those ground gas closeouts? Coming up on this SpaceX launch director's go for launch. Stand by.
Go for launch.
And with that, we are in good shape to see this Falcon fly. Now less than 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
15 seconds. And here we go in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine ignition and liftoff of the Falcon 9 on the Starlink 8-3 mission. The Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Ascent of the Falcon 9 as it passes, passing the speed of sound. See some of those shock collars as the Falcon continues to climb. Passing through max Q, the point of greatest aerodynamic pressure on the vehicle. We're coming up on those three events in fairly rapid succession here, as we continue to see some great tracking views from our team. The first stage main engine cutoff at T plus 2 minutes and 26 seconds, followed 4 seconds later by stage separation. Second stage engine start, coming up at T plus 2 minutes 36 seconds, and then fairing separation just before the 3-minute mark. Did hear the call that the Merlin vacuum engine is being thermally conditioned ahead of its burn beginning. Now less than 20 seconds to me go. See Miko, stage separation. And SCS-1. All good events. Seeing those from the SpaceX onboard cameras there on the right-hand side of your screen. A little hard to see, but the payload fairings have been deployed. See those satellites with the direct to cell with the white dots, and there go the payload fairings from the SpaceX onboard camera, just off the edge of the Merlin vacuum engine from this camera perspective. So far, all appears to be moving nominally with this mission. Those bursts you're seeing between the hypersonic grid fins on the Falcon 9 first stage, those are the cold gas thrusters, helping to adjust the attitude or the positioning of that vehicle as it begins to make its way down towards the drone ship. Just read the instructions. We're We're now just a little bit under 2 minutes away from the start of the first stage entry burn beginning. Kind of shooting into the sun a little bit here, so unclear if we'll actually be able to see the entry burn with our ground-based cameras. We will scout for those, and if we are able to spot it, we will, of course, bring those to you. But just bear in mind, there are some clouds between us and the booster. And again, the position of the sun does not play in our favor as far as seeing that from the ground. But if we can spot it, we'll bring it to you. Now T plus 5 minutes, 6 seconds and counting. Just about a minute away now from the entry burn beginning. Coming up on the entry burn, now beginning in real time. Should see it on the SpaceX feed in just a few seconds.
Stage 1 FTS has safed.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
Here you see the start of that burn there from the SpaceX onboard cameras. That call at the FTS has been safed. That is the flight termination system, no longer needed at this stage in flight.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
The conclusion of that entry burn, you can see the speedometer has been dropping quite dramatically as intended. As the booster continues to make its way down towards the drone ship, slowed by that entry burn, as well as now some notable atmospheric drag. That'll set the booster up for the start of its landing burn, set to begin in less than 50 seconds.
Stage 1 transonic.
Booster traveling below the speed of sound. Both stages of the Falcon 9 appear to be following nominal flight paths so far.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 2 in terminal guidance.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Stage 2
Yes.
FTS has safed.
Appears the onboard cameras from just read the instructions were frozen, but the first stage boosters cams seem to be in working order. So as you saw, that booster safely down on the drone ship, completing its 21st launch and landing. SpaceX was not ready for that. As you can see, the Falcon 9 rocket still in a horizontal orientation there at the pad, It has not been raised into its launch configuration. So SpaceX is targeting that liftoff of this Falcon 9 from historic Launch Complex 39A, looking at 7:21 a.m. Eastern, with backup opportunities that last until 10:59 a.m. Eastern. And again, that's tomorrow, August 11th. And that we've got a good liftoff and landing of the first stage booster here today, marking the 21st flight for 1067. This was the 361st Falcon 9 launch to date. This was the 76th Falcon 9 launch of 2024, the 305th Falcon booster reflight, the launch of a booster that has flown at least once. This is SpaceX's 79th overall launch of 2024, including one Falcon Heavy and two Starship missions. This is the 118th orbital launch within the last 365 days, the 199th launch from Pad 40, getting close to 200, and the 254th overall orbital launch from this pad. Taking a look at the pie chart as it currently stands for the Falcon family, a slight typo, of course. This is August 10th, but here's where we stand with 77 Falcon missions on the board so far. Moving on to some industry stats. I think things got a little out of order here, but we'll hit the industry stats since we're here. This was the 56th launch from Florida, the 82nd from U.S. soil, the 91st from U.S. rocket company, the 45th launch globally with 6 orbital launch failures so far on the year. Briefly swing back to some recovery stats. This was the 86th landing on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. The 264th drone ship landing and the 335th overall SpaceX booster landing. Toggling back to our orbital pie chart, here's where things currently stand. And again, looking ahead to a pair of missions tomorrow, we're also keeping our eyes on what's happening with Rocket Lab, which is set to launch its next mission just a little bit more than a week after its last flight. This is the flight that was set to be the 51st launch for Rocket Lab for Capella Space, but they wanted a little bit more time to work on the payload, so they moved up another launch for Synspective. And now Capella Space is ready to go. So looking at the launch of Electron from New Zealand on a mission called A Sky Full of SARS. Little play on words as Rocket Lab is wont to do. SARS standing for Synthetic Aperture Radar. It's a type of Earth imaging spacecraft. That'll be launched again on behalf of customer Capella Space, coming up around the same time of the now shifted second Falcon launching from the Space Coast again from Pad 39A. You'd see the transporter rector now brought up right here, part of SpaceX's process of turning around